If you're a BIM modeler and you feel stuck and stagnant in your current position for a few years, you feel like your company is not giving you the opportunity to learn and grow, and you've been applying for BIM coordination and management positions, but you don't feel the confidence because you've never done it before, and you also don't have the experience, so you keep getting rejected. It's actually because of this one fundamental reason that you keep getting stuck in this cycle over and over again. And it's called the theory of constraints. And so in this video, what I want to do is break down what this theory is. And this is actually what allowed me to go from university graduate to becoming a BIM coordinator within a year of working full time. And this allowed me to coordinate hospitals, prisons, aged cares, and these large commercial grade projects. And this is exactly what has allowed a lot of people that worked one-on-one with me in my BIM Accelerator program to actually finally grow after a decade or half a decade of stagnation as a BIM modeler. And this theory of constraints is going to allow you to pinpoint and self-diagnose exactly where you're at in terms of your career so that you know, okay, this is my constraint, this is the skill that I have to work on, this is what I have to do in order for me to actually get the job. And so the way that I'll do this is I'll explain this on my iPad. I'm just going to move over to the side over here and we'll talk about this, right? So when you have a goal to become a BIM modeler, right? When you have a goal to become a BIM coordinator or a manager, you set out on this quest to go from your current situation to a desired situation, which is BIM modeler to coordinator or manager. And so there's a few components that we have to go through, a few hoops we have to jump through in order to get to your outcome. And so what the theory of constraints says is that a system is only going to grow to its maximum capacity, right? Or going to grow to a capacity where there is a constraint. And then if there is one key fundamental constraint in that system, it is no longer going to grow above that until you fix that one key issue, right? So anything you try and fix below this is not going to actually solve any problem. The only thing you have to do is put all your focus on solving this one thing, which is your key issue, which is your constraint. It's similar to water. Water is naturally going to flow where there is no resistance. And as soon as there is resistance, like gravity or a board or some sort of cardboard, water is going to come and start hitting that, and it's no longer going to grow. And so what can happen is, as soon as you feel that, you can take action, remove that constraint, and naturally grow like water flowing down, right? Or what can happen is you can have that resistance and you can head into this resistance for half a decade, right? 10 years, and you won't realize that you have actually been hitting that ceiling for a long time. All you have to do is remove that constraint or remove that resistance, and it will naturally start to grow. And so that's the fundamental principle you have to understand. And so you have to figure out, where is your constraint, right? And it's not really experienced most of the time, and that's what I want to break down in this video. And so when you think of you getting a job, right, let's reverse engineer this. So if you think about the outcome of getting a job, there are a few things that we have to do. The first thing is, if you reverse engineer this, you have to go to an interview in order to get a job. But before you even go to an interview, you actually have to be approved to go into an interview. So you have to put your CV and your portfolio in order for you to get an interview. And so there's really, right now, you're a BIM modeler and you have a CV and you have a portfolio, you apply that, you go into an interview and you go into a job. And so the theory of constraints says that as long as you go wrong somewhere, you will not get the job. What you have to do is go right everywhere in order for you to get the job. So I'll give you an example. If you have a really good CV and portfolio by lying, and so you've done all this experience, you probably will get into the next stage, okay? You can get into the next stage. You apply, you get into the next stage, you get to the interview, you fail the interview because it becomes very obvious and clear that you've actually never done this before, okay? So you actually never get the job. Number two, if you, for some reason, don't have a good CV and portfolio, but you get referred by some random person, because they're like your friend and they're working in this company and you get referred as a BIM coordinator. You might get an interview, right? Because you don't even have a good CV or portfolio, but you might get an interview. You might get to this stage somehow from an external means, right? But then you don't actually get the job because it becomes obvious again that you don't know what you're talking about because you have theoretical knowledge, not practical knowledge. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out where exactly you're at and what you need to do in order to make everything a tick. You need to apply, you need to have a good CV and portfolio, and you actually need to get the job interview. Like, you need to impress them in the interview, you need to feel confident and say that you know how to do all these things, and they have to feel like you can do all these things in terms of coordination and management. You need evidence. If you don't have evidence, you will never go through the interview stage to actually get the job. And so this is where a lot of people get stuck because they don't even have the experience, right? And so how do you get the experience if you can't put it on your CV and your portfolio, right? If you can put it on your CV and portfolio and you have the experience, then you can get the job. And so if you think about one step deeper for this specific example, BIM modeler to BIM coordinator, that job, right? There's a series of actions. When people say experience, they don't really mean time, right? What they mean is skills, because experience builds you practical skills. Time in a university to do a BIM degree or something like that, it's not going to build you practical skills. All it's going to do is it's going to build you some theoretical knowledge. And people don't want theoretical knowledge because the company wants you to come into the company and then start to work straight away. Think about this: if you were a company owner and you wanted to hire someone, would you want someone that's been studying for half a decade or a decade and has all these master's degrees and all these experiences, like not these experiences, but all these master's degrees and educational background and all this like research that they've done about BIM, right? Or would you want someone that's actually worked as a BIM coordinator or BIM manager, has some management experience? Because what's your perceived likelihood of achievement goes up when you hire the guy that's actually done the thing before or has evidence that they've done the thing before. And so what you're looking for is practical experience, not necessarily, or proof that they know how to do the thing, not some theoretical knowledge or theoretical experience that they've done in the past. And so what we have to optimize for is practical experience in order to prove that we know what we're talking about, for us to increase our confidence and for them to actually agree and take us into the job. So they have to feel that we can come into the role straight away and start working as a BIM coordinator, BIM manager without in-house training, because they don't want to pay you and train you because that's more expensive. They want you to come in and feel like you can take care of it. And so the trick here is you don't need all this experience. You just need to prove to them and make them believe that you'll be able to do the thing, right? And if they have the conviction in their mind that, okay, this guy can figure it out because he's done this in the past, he has this evidence, then they'll actually give you the job. So that's in terms of interviews. And so when you go from BIM modeler to BIM coordinator, there's a few things that you can learn. You can learn all these different technical programs, right? So there's technical programs. Okay, so you have like, I don't know, ACC, you have Navisworks, you have Celebri, you have like things to do with IFC, you have Revitstu, you have learning like BIM execution plans, you have like the ISO standards, like so many things that you could learn that are probably useless for you right now, because it's like three legs of a chair. If you only learn one thing and you don't have the other two, well then you're constrained by the other two, right? If you have two things and you don't learn the third one, you're constrained by the third one. And so this is very similar to the theory of constraints, where it's like three legs of a chair. You need all three in order for you to succeed. And so think about what you need in order to succeed or get into the management position or BIM coordination position. You need technical programs, but you also need practical experience, okay? Okay, let's break your belief that you actually need the practical experience, because if you really break it down, when people say practical experience, what they want is confidence. They want the perceived likelihood of you being able to do the job to increase. If they believe you can do it, they will give you the job. All right. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out a way in order to showcase that you know how the BIM industry works and the workflows work, even though you actually haven't done it before. And so if you genuinely knew how to do services coordination, if you genuinely knew how to do plant room coordination, if you genuinely knew how to do RCP coordination, precast panel coordination, or like penetration coordination, if you genuinely knew the MEP services really well and the construction process really well, right? And you could prove to them that you knew these things because you had learned from someone that is working in the industry, but you had never done it before. Like, let's just say that you worked in your current position underneath a BIM modeler or a BIM manager and they taught you everything here, but you actually didn't really do like a BIM coordination role, but you learnt all these things and then you apply for a BIM coordination role. You will actually get the job in your next position as a BIM coordinator because you have proved that you've done this and you've learnt this from a practical or like real world experience, or like real world source. And so when people say they want practical experience, companies say they want all these things, they want to know that you've actually done this in the real world and done it according to the BIM workflows and the standards that exist currently today. Because all they want at the end of the day is for you to come in and start working for them and solve problems for their business without you having to get trained from someone in the house or in-house, right? And so what you have to do is figure out, how can I showcase to an employer that I actually have the technical program experience and the practical experience at the same time to make them believe that I can solve the problem straight away as I start learning. Okay, and so this is really the key fundamental principle behind the reason you're constrained over here. Okay, over here, if you knew the practical experience and the technical programs, and they genuinely believe that you could do that, this would happen 100% because you knew this and you knew this, right? And so now what happens is you need to figure out where is your constraint. If you can showcase this stuff and this stuff on your CV and on your portfolio, all of a sudden, all you have to do is apply. If you can showcase this stuff here, you'll actually get to the next stage because you're showing that you know the technical programs and the practical experience. And then in the interview, if you genuinely knew this stuff, you would actually get the job. And so you would not be constrained anymore. And so what can happen is, you can get into a cycle where you learn all of the theoretical programs. You might just be learning, right? And I'm telling you this because I work in the industry, so I understand the things you need to know in order for you to become a BIM coordinator or BIM manager. Let's expand this out again a little bit. If you only genuinely learn this stuff, which is what a lot of people try to do in a practical sense, right? They try to take some courses online and they try to learn ACC, Navisworks, Calibri, but they don't learn it in the real sense of how it's applied in the industry. They learn the very theoretical knowledge, right? They don't learn the practical ways. They don't learn how to do permission settings properly, the design collaboration properly. They just learn this is how to use Navisworks. They watch something online on YouTube, right? That doesn't differentiate you. What you need to know is you need to know how to do this in the real world and how it's actually implemented for a real world project. And you need to do it. And if you do it once, you'll feel the confidence. If you feel the confidence, then you can actually go and you can tick this off, which is the ultimate constraint for you not being able to get a job, right? And also by doing this and learning this in the real world context, you're able to put this on your CV and your portfolio, which is also going to unlock and unclog this area over here, which is your CV portfolio to your interview. They're just going to accept you because it's going to be obvious on your CV that you know and portfolio that you know these things. Okay. If you learn these things, right? If you genuinely knew services coordination, plan room, RCP penetration, MEP stuff in construction process, if you genuinely knew those things, then when you go to your interview, they're 100% going to give you the job because you genuinely know it. When they ask you questions, you can actually talk about how you have done it in the past. And so the trick really is, by the way, that's also going to allow you to get into from your CV portfolio to your interview stage because you genuinely have that skill set so you can put it on your portfolio. And so all you really need to do is think about what are the things that a BIM coordinator knows that you don't know, which I'm telling you right now, it's the technical programs. You don't know how to do this stuff in the real world context, and you don't know how to think about coordinating in a real world context. If you just go and you learn these things, right, and you find someone either in your current company that knows these things and you learn from them, or you find some sort of mentor or someone that's actually in the industry and you learn from them, don't learn the theoretical practical stuff. Like don't just learn ACC, Navisworks, Calibri, like that's not going to help you because you're still going to be constrained over here. Does that make sense now? Like just learning Navisworks, by the way, just learning Navisworks and like a little bit of Calibri, is not going to allow you to do anything because you're still going to be constrained over here. And so you might do all of this and it might be a waste of time. And it is going to be a waste of time because when you apply to jobs, it's going to be wasting your time, right? So what you need to do is learn all these different things, go and apply, and you'll actually get the job. And so this is the theory of constraints. Hopefully this made sense, right? If you're interested in learning every single one of these things in terms of the technical programs, the practical experience, in terms of the services, plant room, RCP, all these different things, and you want to learn from a real world person, go down. I have a link in my description. The first one is a BIM Coordination Masterclass where I go through this whole process so you can understand exactly how this is applied in the real world so you can stop learning theoretical knowledge and finally actually take action, learn these practical stuff, the practical skills, so you can finally get out of the loop or the cycle you're in right now, which is you apply to a role, right? The role rejects you because you have no experience, but then because you have no experience, you apply to a role again and then the role rejects you. And so you're stuck in this until over here, you can prove to someone that you actually do have the real world skills. You don't have to have the real world experience, but you need the real world skills. And if you can think of your career like this and your growth like this, you will 100% be able to move into BIM coordination and management in the next 6 to 12 months. And that's going to be very, very simple. It just takes time to learn these things, learn it efficiently. If you're going to learn it by yourself, it's going to be challenging because you have to do a lot of research. And if you can do this and showcase that you know all these things, you go to an interview and you genuinely, with conviction, can say that you know these things, 100% of the time, you will be able to achieve your goal and move towards the dream life that you want, where you finally feel passion towards your work. You don't feel like you're sort of in a dead end job where you hate it, right? You don't feel underappreciated, like you're a tool, like you're undervalued. You will finally start to like everything you do on a day-to-day basis. All right. So if you're interested, go down, watch that next masterclass, and I'll see you in the next video.